You start making introductions.
Excuse me.
So you can start making introductions, or Jacob?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm going to start right now. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. I hope you are doing well. And thank you very much for coming this month Global Chamber Monthly AI series. Today's guest is Manuel Herranz. On top of being an internationally recognized AI expert, he is the Global Chamber of Valencia's advisory board member as well. And he's one of the experts who is known for LLM, large language model, AI field. And today we like to demystify DeepSeek. Why this happened? Because last month, when we were starting the monthly AI series like this, we had a conversation with Doug that he popped up saying like he didn't know anything about DeepSeek, but it seems like a big deal, and we kind of let it be, saying like next month maybe we're going to talk about it. So that's when Manuel volunteered. Thank you very much to talk about DeepSeek. And so today we like to know what happened and what it is and what it's not, and how this is going to impact maybe technologically, but not so much. What we want to know as the global chamber is how this is going to impact maybe international economic aspect. Maybe that's the focus we'd like to take, but it depends on you as well. And thank you very much for coming today. And please put where you are. And if you have any questions, please put it on the chat. And don't forget to put your contact information and as well as your LinkedIn profile on the chat, so you can start talking to the people who are in this room, as well as we can get back to you if you had any questions. And thank you very much for your participation and co-hosting, Jacob. And Jacob is my co-host as usual, but today he's off camera because he's recovering from a little bit of physical conditions. And thank you very much for coming. Jacob, would you like to give some words?
Yeah, hey everyone. Thank you, Yuka. Yeah, it's always great to be back. Just this is something that I look forward to each month. I had to miss last month, and a lot has been going on, but tis the season, everyone's season. It seems like a lot is going on, and with AI especially, as things evolve, things happen almost at times, like I wouldn't exponential is a big rate, but at a nearly exponential rate. And I feel like a sort of DeepSeek might have been somewhat of that curve. And what I'm excited about is different options. I think that having all of these models, it's good to be able to use different models, see how different ones benefit you versus the others. But what I'm almost more interested in, that I think really plays well with the global chamber community, is yeah, how in today's current state, you know there's almost like this technology race now, and how is DeepSeek and future models going to sort of have an impact on different global dynamics. And so yeah, excited to also, have DeepSeek demystified for myself. I think that, I was having a reflection just earlier this morning about, uh, just it's been over 2 years since I started using um, that technology, starting with ChatGPT, and at that point, I felt like I was already behind when it was, it only had been launched a few months before. But you know now it's like, still with these models, it's like you're never behind, and all of these opportunities give you a chance to almost race right ahead. And so
Mhm.
yeah, Manuel, I'm excited to hear the story, hear some updates on DeepSeek, and some of your thoughts and insights, and also just have some questions, and have
Yeah.
have a conversation about the potential and future. But I'll pass it over to you, and thank you, Yuka, for the lovely introduction.
Thank you, Jacob, and I hope you will get us soon.
Thank you.
Okay, so let me start the structure of the talk. And I understand the geopolitical implications of having a new player that doesn't come from Silicon Valley is what is going to interest all our audience, the most. So first, I'll introduce myself, then I'll summarize at a very high level what is the science behind LLMs, dispel some myths about LLMs and AI in general, and then I'll run a short deep dive in why DeepSeek has upset the status quo from Silicon Valley ventures, from the ChatGPTs and Geminis and Claudes and different players, even Mistral in France as well. And I'll open the floor to any questions. And I'll give you one or two things that are not well known by the general public about how DeepSeek came along and who's behind it. So my name is Manuel Herranz. I'm the CEO founder of Pangeanic. We used to be a Japanese subsidiary until 2005. I led a management buyout because our headquarters at the time in Tokyo wanted to sell the company, and then I got the company after them. Since 2009, I've been involved in a science called pattern recognition, which was quite popular in the late 90s and the turn of the century. Pattern recognition is behind anything that we see. It evolved into other sciences that we now know as machine learning or deep learning. But pattern recognition is based on the mathematical understanding of why things happen. So the same algorithm, or very similar algorithms, might be useful to understand that a square at the bottom of the sea is not a natural occurrence. It must be an object, and then we'll see what kind of object it is. And or you can detect irregular patterns on a lady's chest, and that is a shape that shouldn't be there. It's likely that you have a tumor. All this science, as I said, developed in what we now know as deep learning. Deep learning, most deep learning and machine learning are based on huge amounts of data that is trained to do typically one single thing. So that one single thing can be interpreting or decoding language into speech into a transcript. Okay, so we have speech transcription. Parallel corpora can be used to understand the patterns between a language and another language. So it doesn't matter how remote these languages are. These could be Japanese to Portuguese, for example, or Russian to English or to Arabic. as long as you have enough data and you can find patterns from this data, you will find a machine that decodes this. Now, the science has run in decoding such patterns using a technology that Google released called transformers. And to summarize everything is what we call either an encoder to a decoder. An encoder that understands the question and a decoder that gives you the answer. So the question might be translate bonjour, and the decoding of that is good morning. The question to that could be, is this the picture of a dog? And the answer is yes, it's a picture of a dog. No, it's a picture of something else. Okay. Good. It's not a coincidence that most people behind the development of LLMs, ChatGPT, Jacob, come from the machine translation world because they were dealing with language problems. And the release of what we know now as LLMs, it solves a language problem. The difference between the encoder and decoder and the LLM architecture, which is a decoder to decoder, is the amount of data, monolingual data, that you provide. So machine translation systems understood parallel corporate, for example. With LLMs, you just fed monolingual data. To create an LLM, you feed a lot of data, typically coming from the internet, so the source is not very clean. Add on top a number of books, Wikipedia, lots and lots of data there. But that is not enough. Okay? That is what we call a baseline LLM that does not answer questions. To answer questions, to query that huge repository of data, which only serves to predict the next token. Okay, so LLMs are very fluid. We know that. You have to create what we call the instruct. The instruct is a number of set questions and answers so that the system learns to understand what people ask and the typical question, the typical answer to that question. And you have to give it again, tons and tons and tons of questions and answers. So for every LLM that we find out in the market, we have first a language fluency training, and we call this supervised fine-tuning, tons and tons of data. Then we fine-tune that model to answer questions. The secret of the success of ChatGPT initially, and then all the models that came later, is the quality of those questions and those answers. Okay, and to run that, the process is called reinforcement learning with human feedback, because you have humans driving all these questions and all the typical answers, and then interfacing with the model to see how good the model is behaving. Everything, I mean, this is not a secret, everything, if you want to find out more about this, everything is very well explained and documented in the Llama 2 paper by Meta. You can go to archive.org, look for the paper on Llama 2, how Llama 2 was trained, and everything is explained there. By the way, OpenAI does not release how its model is trained. There, I guess, is initially, yes, they provided some data on how much Wikipedia sets and books and internet data was, and then became really closed. People like me don't call it OpenAI; we call them closed AI, because it's really, they're very good, but you don't know what's going on behind the curtains. So here we see that the industry took two different approaches. The people that prefer to have a closed model, very good, but close. So the rest of the world is going to be a consumer of my model, So even though I'm called OpenAI, it's a closed model. I don't release any data of how I do things. You will never know. I have wonderful models. You pay me, I'll keep on giving you a service. And another model, which is called open source, DeepSeek belongs to this open source model, which is not truly open source. Open source means that you provide both the code and the data set so people can replicate what you have done. Meta's Llama models are not open source. We call them open source because everybody, for convenience, but really, strictly speaking, no scientist will say they're open source. They're open weight models. This means that I can take your model, your Llama model, and if I don't like it, I can include more data, language data, to customize it for a particular language. So in South Africa, Afrikaans, Arabic, whatever. Or I can re-instruct that model so it answers questions like I want it to answer. Okay, there's a lot more science to it. There are guardrails, so the model will not answer, will not engage in obscene conversations or political. Okay, but those are guardrails that sit on top of the model. So it answers or doesn't answer certain type of questions. Okay, so that was the science in 5 minutes of how LLMs came into being. OpenAI is a nonprofit. It was run by Sam Altman. Elon Musk was there initially, or Microsoft was there from the beginning. At one point, Elon Musk and Sam Altman departed, different ways, different conceptions, and the nonprofit carried on being a nonprofit until Microsoft very generously gave him $10 billion to have a stake and a saying into it. Elon Musk went on to do its own thing. He has the money to do it. And then Meta kept on releasing open source models, open weight models, so that the community could build on top of them. And you might ask, well, what's the point of spending millions and millions of dollars in releasing something from which you don't actually gain? What's the ROI in releasing open source models by Meta? Well, you build a community of users that let you be the standard of that model. And the bigger the community, the more adoption of that model, the more that community will depend on your developments, and the more you will make money by being the supplier. Potentially, you can close it at any time and say, look, we're going to follow OpenAI's model. Good. So far, so good. Everyone follows. Okay. Now here comes DeepSeek about 3-4 weeks ago, and this is not the first DeepSeek version. DeepSeek is a Chinese startup, as everyone knows by now, and the story behind it is that they used some a very new technique. Obviously, they didn't have access to the hardware that Silicon Valley companies have. They trained the model with $5 or $6 million, and with inferior hardware and a lot less money, they created something that could match ChatGPT 4.0, or come very close, or beat and even beat Anthropic's Claude, etc. Now, that is not right. DeepSeek did not create the R1 model or V3 model with $5 or $6 million. They use a lot more money. And they did have access to state-of-the-art hardware. So let's step back 1 year or 2 years before the story. DeepSeek is a startup created by a Chinese billionaire called Liang Wenfeng. Liang Wenfeng is a mathematician. He made a lot of money on the stock market in China by applying algorithms and and getting money from investments. DeepSeek was initially a side project of a Chinese fund called High Flyer, in which he has a majority stake. And initially, DeepSeek was going to be more a Perplexity.ai, Perplexity, a search engine with knowledge, than a large language model. But they, about 2 years ago, they took on a Chinese scientist called Fulis, the Southern Macatri, that is the first name. 29-year-old young girl, young lady, who had written 8 scientific articles and presented them at ACL, the Association for Computer Linguistics. And as I said, a lot of these people come from computational linguistics background. That caught the attention of Huawei in China, and they offered her a salary of $1.5 million, which she refused to lead a project called DeepSeek. And she eventually turned DeepSeek into a large language model, which was what she wanted to do. So, and she's the brains of everything. Then DeepSeek took on local talent from Chinese university, very young people, but people that had read and were very aware of the state-of-the-art articles from the West, let's call it, from the United States and from Europe. Let me remind you that some of the best papers on the science, if you look at anything that is written on LLMs and transformers, on quality evaluation and on machine translations, you will see a lot of Chinese names. So this is not news. It would be news if it came from Spain, for example, although there are some Spanish names in some papers. But it would be a really big surprise if it came from another country. It's not a surprise that comes from China. There is a lot of talent. And that's not Manuel saying it. Tim Cook, no less, said that the amount of tool engineers that he could find in China could fill stadiums, whereas Apple struggles to fill a road with tooling engineers in the United States, and that he thanked the Chinese educational system for providing such an large amount of talent. Good. So let's go back to Liang Wenfeng. He puts the money. Okay, everything's going to change. We're not going to do a Perplexity. We have this young lady leading it. Have all the money in the world before the US or the West imposed some restrictions. DeepSeek already had a lot of NVIDIA hardware H100s. For the last 2 or 3 years, they bought an inferior model called H800, which is not so inferior. Basically performs just the same, but the speed at which it transmits data is a little bit slower. Rather than transmitting information at 6 gigabytes per second, it runs at 3 gigabytes. But performance-wise, is an H100. So that's the first myth. DeepSeek did have access to a lot of hardware there for training. Then the models have been coming out, have been released for 2 years. If you were not an expert, if you were not interested in the field, DeepSeek probably never made headlines. You did not notice that they had a math LLM, that they had a semi-reasoning LLM, a V2. Okay, it was a small company, or nothing spectacular about that company. But they release V3, and the R1 model, and they cause sensation for 2 reasons. One, because their paper is public and open, and the model is truly open source. You can access the code in Hugging Face. In fact, you can go to GitHub and access the whole code and download it. They've distilled versions from it. So you have the 7B, you have the 14B, 32B, or 70B. This means that you can download them. I have two versions in this computer at home, a 7 billion, a 7B, and a 14B. I can run them on a M1 with 16 megs of RAM, nothing spectacular, and they work. 7B is quite fast. The 12B is a little slower, but it works. I can run them. From my home computer, my home Mac. So they're opening the field tremendously to the amount of people that can adopt AI. But the model didn't cost concretely speaking, was $5.57 million. There was a back calculation on how much it would have costed them. And this is something that scientists do a lot. They run a back calculation of how much they would have paid should they have hired external hardware. Of course, they had all the hardware already. So only for the training of the last part of this model, I think they used like 3,000 hours in computer, they would have spent $5.6 million. But they never paid that. They already had access to a lot more hardware, and they had previous models which they could use to fine-tune their model. Okay, so two myths that need to disappear. Number one, it costs a lot more than 5 to 6 million. You don't build an LLM with 5 to 6 million. I can tell you that. They did have access to state-of-the-art hardware. But something that is extremely interesting from their paper is that they have developed very efficient methods of things that were theoretical, but nobody had tried. Particularly, one theory by Google DeepMind's team, by Richard Sutton there, a paper called Reward is Enough. Now, reward is enough means that you can train machines with machine input. I said at the beginning that you need a lot of humans writing questions and answers and selecting the best answer. That's how, until then, until 3 weeks ago, people assumed that the science, what you had to do. Because I had access to these models, and probably the benchmark, or they've been accused of copying OpenAI, that forget it, they don't need to do that. They used the theory that reward is enough to create something they call group reward policy optimization, which means that given a set of questions, you set up a group. Okay, let's say that the question is, what is the capital of France? And your initial model, your previous model, will say the capital of France is Paris. And next time it will say Paris. And the next question will say Istanbul. And the next question will say Paris is the capital of the country called France. So given these answers, you can say, well, I'm going to favor the first one because the first one is the one that people will prefer, the capital of France. The question is, what is the capital of France? Answer is, the capital of France is Paris. I want to reward that type of answer. I'm going to give it a 1. If you say Paris, that's good. It's the right answer, but it's very succinct. It's very short. So I'm going to give you 0.9 on the scale. Istanbul is wrong. That's a 0. And an answer such as, an upside down answer like Paris is the capital of the country. Too long, still right. But I'm going to give you, whatever, 0.7, 0.6. So you can now understand that by running this at scale, and asking machines to create these data sets, these question and answer data sets, you can fine tune a model without using humans, which is where the very heavy investment went initially in OpenAI. And this is very good, for example, for math problems or code, because you already know the answer. You already know, yeah, group reward policy optimization. So if you know the answer of a problem, 2 and 2 is always 4. Okay, so you might say the answer, the answer to the question 2 and 2 is 4 or just 4. You can start rewarding better or worse answers there. In the case of math, it's very straightforward because you always know the answer first. In the case of code, you know what type of code is the final result. So it's quite easy to direct the model, to train the model into the right coding. And DeepSeek excels at math, excels at code. Is less good, as Yuka very well pointed out, to answer some questions, and it does have hallucinations. That is typical of a well-finished LLM. The fact that it has not been supervised by a lot of humans. So last facts about DeepSeek, and then I'll open the floor for you. DeepSeek, as that is belongs to an investment fund called Highflyer. Highflyer is on the same building in Hong Kong as a bank called Bank of East Asia, which has been a family business for many years in China. The Bank of East Asia has a large stake in Highflyer, in the fund. And this bank, the Bank of East Asia, is sorry, let me reformulate. The Bank of East Asia has a stake by a Spanish bank called La Caixa at 19.99%, right, virtually 20%. 20% of the bank that controls a large stake in Highflyer belongs to Spanish bank. So this is now where I'm going to get at the geopolitical consequences. Do expect some not so strict treatment of the technology by Spain in particular, and probably Europe, because La Caixa is very well, always has good connections with whatever government is right or left. It doesn't matter. But La Caixa is, I think it's number 2 or number 3 in the country, UK, and it has a lot of huge investment. La Caixa, yeah, Caixa Bank.
It's number 2 or 3.
Yes, number 2 or 3. Let me share this info in the chat. Okay, there you go. So do expect some, I'm not going to say some favoritism, but certainly some understanding, because there will be financial pressures from La Caixa to politicians. Say, look, don't touch this. We're going to make a lot more money than we expected when we started collaborating with this Chinese bank. Good. So what makes DeepSeek so different, and why has it upset solutions from Silicon Valley? Number one, because well, the story went that they trained it with $5 to $6 million. That's not true, as we now know. But they did use partly inferior hardware, and they did develop, well, GRPO is one, but they did develop very optimal ways in the training of the model, which consume a lot less resources. And then we could get into a very technical discussions of what those were. Lowering the entry barrier for the rest of us. interestingly enough, and I will share the notes at the end of the session or post-session, just after DeepSeek was released, there was a paper from another Chinese scientist proving that he could train a 7B small model, fine-tune it in a home computer with a game card, an NVIDIA M card, which costs about anything between $1,600 to $3,000. So now we have a situation where the business model of Silicon Valley companies charging, you had a non-profit charging you $200 for a group subscription, or $20 for an individual subscription, is deeply disrupted. You can run a model from home. If you're a company, you can adopt that model to do really wonderful things. We got the 14B just as a trial, not even the best performing distill model. And we hacked it and we breached it so it can answer questions about China and the Chinese Communist Party and Tiananmen Square. And we did that in 3 or 4 days at Pangeanic. So it has given, it's returning power to communities that now can build on it. And the consequence, the geopolitical consequence of this is that you're going to have a lot more players around, developing specialized solutions for particular cases, which is exactly what I was talking about when I mentioned pattern recognition. Pattern recognition is a science that, given a right amount of data, provides a solution to a particular problem, be it recognition of images or language issues or data classification, etc. And I think I could go on and on forever, but I think I'll stop here. And if I've given you 1 or 2 tips for providing information that you didn't until now, I'm satisfied.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was very interesting. And data from the data pattern recognition technician to machine learning, deep learning, and becoming the real world-renowned Gen AI expert. That's your trajectory so far, right? And it's an honor to have you here, and you know much about what the backstory is, who is involved in these projects, and it was very, very interesting. There was a question here, a little broader question, but let me read. Given the rapid advancement, this is from Anthony Pico. Anthony, would you like to come online and ask this question by yourself?
Oh, sure. No, I mean, well, just given the rapid, hey, it's good to see you, Yuka. And Manuel, thank you
Nice
so
seeing you.
much for speaking to us today. This is an area where we're involved in my company, and we spend a lot of our time and resource here. And DeepSeek, we've been playing with it. I loved how you mentioned that you can run it on your local machine, your local Mac using M1. It's so awesome for companies that are using, for using AI and are used to paying for the tokens and doing all this stuff and paying for the.
You don't need to pay for tokens anymore.
That's right, and so you can run it. One of the things that what DeepSeek was like, wasn't it modeled? It was like a model trained from other models, kind of like the cliff notes of the cliff notes. But that really wasn't my question. You can answer that here in a minute because I'm really interested in that. And I just got done listening to Grok 3's presentation on Monday, and obviously, if you're looking at the Amy and some of the of course, everybody's touting how awesome they are, but it's really interesting. You were pointing to the kind of the ratings of the output, or the answers to the questions. One of the things Grok 3 does that's really awesome is it does show you the reasoning, in real time, it asking itself questions and then double checking. I love that thought. But here's my real question. Given the rapid advancements in AI and the increasing number of language models, I mean, it's just ever increasing. I mean, what it is today is going to be probably exponential next year, but especially from all of these non-Silicon Valley players like DeepSeek, how do you see the global AI landscape shifting in terms of economic and geopolitical influence? Obviously the government's just put $500 million or $500 billion into kind of their own, the US government has. And what role do you think the regulatory frameworks will play in this shift? And this is something that I really care deeply about relative to the EU and the fractured kind of, how they the bureaucracy impacts, regulatory environments relative to AI.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Anthony. Well, the EU did without 25 or 26 all those about data protection. So if you can do that in a weekend, well, that proves probably the way and that. But everyone had to comply with them, including us. It's true that Europe has been there were many things that we could not do at our company because of GDPR.
Yeah.
And I understand that you don't want to be asking people's passports or pictures without their permission and so forth, because then you can open a kind of worms that data privacy. Hopefully, you don't want that getting into people's houses or kitchens and see what they're doing. Absolutely. But yeah, Europe was at a disadvantage there. Now the field is quite open, and it's very interesting. The Arab world has been leading these two. This double feed, it's called. What I mean by that is that now Europe and the Arab world have access to Western hardware. Maybe I don't know, you can buy, well, get yourself in the queue, but eventually you will get an H100 or the H200 and top of the range Chinese software.
Right.
You have to. Previously, you either had the software only lived in Silicon Valley. Okay, you could buy the hardware, but they were wishy-washy models. Mistral, we hosted Mistral for 2 weeks. It was good, but you could tell it was not a finished model, and it was quite unreliable in a way. It was okay for question answers, but it was hard to build a product on top of it. It was not you can. I'm a big AI fan, and I think AI is the future in a way that it will be all around us.
Absolutely.
3 years, 5 years, 10, I'm not going to say a number, how long this is going to take, but everything that we will be doing in X amount of years is going to be supported by AI. I think the US government has done something that is quite forward-looking by investing in electricity grids. That's something that Europeans have not realized yet.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want all these AIs, you want all the self-hostings, you have all these NVIDIA. Where's the power going to come from?
Right. Is this actually this is one of the challenges of talking about AI from the software side, and you alluded to NVIDIA in the hardware side, and I think this is what a lot of people don't. And while we're conceptually talking about quantum computing and AI and the future of computing, a lot of people don't really have a grasp of the depth of quantum computing, and then how it's either analogous to or useful for AI, and power is the name of the game in every scenario. Energy is the name of the game. But
Absolutely.
what are your thoughts on the future of the hardware computing that AI is going to require, and then just how disruptive DeepSeek was, because you can run it on cheap hardware today?
Yeah, but still an LLM. An
Right.
LLM is a part of the puzzle in AI. Okay? AI is much bigger. In fact, I shied away for a long time, coming from the field, to say that we develop AI. We developed natural language processing. It was what we did. But if you say NLP, people don't know, and you're the boring guy in the bar that talks about what what natural what. NLP being the branch of AI that deals with language issues, transcription, speech recognition, translation, or whatever. Now, LLMs are about, if they haven't done so, they're about to reach their ceiling. There's only so much you can do with an LLM. But let's go back to the beginning. Tons and tons of data, internet data, books. That's something that DeepSeek has done very well. They got data that is not internet. And that's why they could serve so many languages very well, even language from India. If they had used the same the same crawling data that everyone else used, they would have gotten more or less the same result. So the next step in hardware, and that's a very, very good question, the quantum leap in AI is not going to come from LLMs. It's going to come from quantum computing. And what you need for quantum computing is really, really hot, produces a lot of energy. And if you want to host something that produces a lot of heat, you need to go to a very cold place. Let's call it Greenland, to name one. That is the reason why somebody would be interested in setting up in Greenland. Not to host LLMs. You already have that.
Totally.
Have you the next step?
Have you thought about, like, so, like they shut down Willow and all of this stuff, and they're, they were thinking about, there are all these errors that they thought they were getting in the output, and then they've been freaking out because the errors aren't really errors. They're finding out that the quantum computing is actually is the outputs are using new mathematical truths that humans haven't yet discovered, and this is where the limit of LLMs, it really shows itself. It's like we've got the knowledge of an ant relative to the knowledge of all of humanity, or everything all together. I mean, it's just mind blowing how we've segmented our conversation, and we have to, because we're talking about AI, but just where the real future of all of this is in the compute.
Yes, that's exactly. So I eventually, well, there's another cold place on Earth that circles around the North Pole in a country called Russia, and I predict that they have a very good future if they invest in quantum computing. But now I think that this probably points when Trump put out, I don't know, I'm not going to get into politics, but there is a huge interest in that, not because of LLMs and ChatGPT. That's LLMs, DeepSeek. That's yesterday's technology. It's what people are paying for now. So I'm not going to invest in something that is happening now. It has to be really revolutionary. DeepSeek is disrupting the market because you can do it. People can save. Okay, savings. Okay, that's a nice word. Saving on tokens, saving on subscriptions, etc. But looking in 5 or 10 years time, it's quantum. Now, what can AI bring? I have my own theories, but that's a different talk. Whether we will have.
I want to grab a beer with you, Manuel. I got to come to Spain, wherever you're at.
Yeah, AIs that with a lot more powerful chains of thought are capable of independent thinking, and the amount of depth in the thinking that to Terminator style, they could look at us like we look at our pets. Somebody has said. Ilias Suskever, I think, said that when he still worked for OpenAI. He was scared that the way AI development could go if we develop this super intelligence. That super intelligence could look at us like we look at our dogs. We don't wish any. We like dogs. We have pets. We like cats. But that would be the difference being that we hold the flag. So, you start treating me like a dog, I'll go switch button.
And if I could jump in real quick, and I want to throw it out to the audience for any final questions. And Anthony, thank you for those questions, and I love the conversation that y'all had. And so, that's something that's really been important to me, is all of the shifts that are occurring right now that touch everything, from international development to education to technology. And it's refreshing to see technology like DeepSeek come out, and in a world that is so interconnected. Everything is connected, people are connected, everyone lives in different places, and to have this sort of closed mentality, it's not sustainable. And if there are people like, you see what's happening in China, that there are countries that have the resources that will fill those gaps, and some of the previous countries that filled those gaps will have a hard time catching back up, because people are taking a different approach, and bringing a lot of value, and not necessarily just taking. And yeah, and so would love to throw out to any other questions, from people out there in the audience. um Feel free to come off mic. If not, we can have probably another question between Yuka and I.
Yeah. Does anybody have any question? No?
So everything was clear?
No, but
That's scary. That's scary.
So super clear.
Okay. Thank you. So we talked about DeepSeek, but I am following Sakana AI from their launch, And do you know about Sakana AI, which is Tokyo-based AI company, which is doing small models from the beginning. Why it's Sakana? Sakana means fish in Japanese. It is imagined like small models making a huge fish. Small fish makes big fish kind of concept. And 3 Google AI people gathered in Tokyo and launched Sakana AI. And now it is founded by NTT. So it's a very good chance. They have a very good chance to succeed as well. It's becoming like a Japanese, not governmental, but national kind of, maybe project. So on one side, we have SoftBank investing heavily in OpenAI with Trump in the States. On the other side, the Japanese companies are investing in another model, which is really small models. It's completely open sourced as well. Can you give us a little bit of opinion about how these international competitions are going to go from now?
Yeah. So I don't know. I know Sakana, but I don't know. I haven't researched as much as I did with DeepSeek. But yes, I do know them. They are working in what we call small language model or agentic AI, rather than large language model. LLMs take a lot of investment to develop. it's a proof that AI, or LLM development at least, is becoming more democratic around the world. And they are developing small language models or agentic solutions to particular problems, which is admirable. But what I do admire about Japan is that Japan has gone nearly the full circle. Japan was one of the first countries that Sam Altman visited, and sorry, not visited, but opened a foreign office, an open AI office to cater for the needs of the local market. It didn't do that in Germany. It didn't do that in anywhere else. Japan was number one because he knew that if he wanted to make a mark and make money, it had to be as Japanese as possible.
Yeah.
Good. So, okay, initially Japan just adopted what was coming from the outside. Okay, OpenAI, we like it. Wow, he's so fluent. Yes, he answers questions in wow, really fluent Japanese. Wow. Initially, just took everything in, and then after a year and a half, Japan is building small models, specific solutions to problems. And then only 2 weeks ago, I think somebody, I'm not sure if it was NTT or somebody from the government, said, like, okay, this LLM thing is good. We're going for reasoning. Our goal is not the LLM or the AI. Our goal is AGI, is the artificial general intelligence. That's where we have to go, which is very, very forward-looking. Okay, maybe we missed the LLM, fine. So we didn't build the first combustion engine, but we're Japanese. We can do better than this. So we're going to go, boom. We're going to go for the full AGI, for the general intelligence, rather than just playing about with small model, and question and answers and translations, and that kind of thing. So I think my guess is that Japan is going to be a significant player within the next few years. Of course, they have the manpower, they have the resources, they have the money, they have the talent, they have the industry, they have national buyers. So the market is a very mature market for these solutions to flourish.
Wow, it's interesting.
And if I could throw one thought in there, my last final thought, and Manuel, thank you so much for presenting today, and this was mind opening in so many ways. But I think you see this in a couple of the examples that we've discussed, is that there's almost like a unifying fight for innovation and to provide innovation to people within the country and make it more widely used and accepted. And here, as much as a lot has been demystified, there's still a lot of fear and fragmentation. And, I think that is something that will, set us back. Is, there's good in competition, but, it's not widely understood. And it's also, there's a lot of, and I think, that lack of information and not understanding things always leads to anxiety. And so I think having this unifying cry for innovation, unifying fight for that is incredible. And that's something that other countries can take examples from.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to throw one. I don't like to make predictions, but I'm going to throw one to maybe right, maybe wrong. Do you expect a competitor to NVIDIA from China soon?
Wow.
Soon, okay. I mean, and the competitor is, yes, because, and this proves that restrictions don't work. Restrictions don't work. The best thing that could happen to DeepSeek is that they had restrictions on the hardware. That's the reason why they develop all these clever and new methods to train LLMs. But they had access to H100, the team would have bought tons and tons of, they would have done exactly the same as everybody else. But because they were restricted, I think, what is the saying? That's necessity is the mother
Of invention, yeah.
of invention. Yes, that's right. Huawei, again, Huawei will sooner or later, if it's not Huawei, will be somebody else, will produce GPUs that are, okay, maybe not 100%, but if they are 80%, 90% as good as the latest NVIDIAs,
Wow.
and they will be,
Yes.
and they will be cheap, and they will be affordable.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's a wild guess, but
Yeah.
it would make sense. It would make sense.
We'll write that down and hold you to it, Manuel. But
Yeah.
I've heard
Hold me to
I've heard
it.
similar things myself.
Yeah. So with this, thank you very much for presentation and all the people who participated. And next month we're going to run another AI series, but please keep an eye on this topic, and maybe we are going to invite Manuel other times as well if there's any request. So please keep an eye, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, everyone.
Yuka?
Yes,
Of
please.
course.
One last thing. Cesar, I'm sorry I can't make it tomorrow, but it's a family trip. I'll be in the car.
No
I'll be in the
worries.
right table
I was
tomorrow. I'm
planning
sorry
to
about
send
that.
you. I was planning to send you an email afterwards, Manuel. Let's set you up for March.
Sorry.
That's good. Family is important.
Okay, well, I guess, Manuel, quick question before I let you go. Mona here. I am novice, and thank you so much for all the information that you shared. Some of it seems like a foreign language to me, but I use AI as an assistant for research, and I've been using ChatGPT, and then I started looking into DeepSeek. What I'm noticing is that when I am researching subjects, the same information that this platform or AI has is the same thing as the other one. So, I mean, it's not like there's huge difference. What's the big deal about DeepSeek then?
Okay, you can think two things here. They've copied it. Or you can think, if you provide the same training data to a transformers model, you're going to get the same answer, which is probably what has happened. Many times, the answer is different, but many times it's similar. Sometimes it's similar. I find it that my type of questions, I do get different answers. I pay Anthropic's Claude, I have a subscription to OpenAI, and I don't pay DeepSeek, but I use the free version. Sometimes it's similar, the working is different, but obviously the training material is likely to be quite similar, which is all the internet data and then some books. What makes DeepSeek different is that there's a very good language cover, particularly in Asian languages. If you ask it questions about European geography, it fails. Okay, questions that Mistral, Le Chat, the French company, does very well, that OpenAI does very well, or even US geography. Okay, where's such a town? Small village. All these models will get it right. The Chinese, obviously, they're not interested in European or US geography. So, and they have less of that, but they have very good information, geographical information from countries like India or Southeast Asian languages and countries. It's relevant for them.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. I just wanted to know. Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Great. Is there any other burning questions? No. So anyways, with this, thank you very much, and see you next month.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Mel.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Okay.
you.